as we continue to squander our brilliant cultural legacy as musicians, poets, educators, and inventors. We call our women bitches and hoes. In a vivid exhibition of self-repulsion, we refer to ourselves as niggas. In our quest for acceptance and our relentless worship of bling, we have shared our sense of dignity and self-worth. It didn't used to be this way. Ironically, back when we fought for the opportunities we now abuse, that is when we stood tallest. Out of our torturous struggle for equality morphed a mighty pride and honor.
Slave to our freedom.
But now our pride is built on hollow motives and aimless ambitions. Today, to identify our oppressor, the modern black American need look no further than his own mirror. All of us aren't lost. Many of us know damn well that the emperor is butt naked. Every day we fight the good fight. But high praise for low thinking has taken its toll on generations. When so many are lost, there is enough blame to go around. When Martin Luther King Jr. prophesied the black man one day reaching the so-called promised land, he said, "I might not get there with you." Lord knows, he didn't think we'd end up here.
Act 7 of our divine constitution and bylaws. All members must properly attend their meetings and become a part and a partial of all uplifting acts of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Members must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of the Moorish Science Temple of America. Then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband, take care of your children, and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure with love and their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Drew Ali, through the guidance of his father, God Allah. At this time, I recite the Moorish American prayer, the source from which we draw our strength. Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. First off, I'd like to rise, walking in Jerusalem, just like John, giving praise to Allah, the author, the creator, the governor of the world, almighty, eternal, and incomprehensible, the one who stretches forth the heaven with his hands, who have described with his fingers the courses of the stars, who said it bounds to the ocean that it cannot pass, and said to the stormy winds, be still. I'd like to give on to the lily of the valley, the bright and morning star, talking about none other than our holy and illustrious prophet, Noble Drew Ali. I'd like to give honor to Prophet Noble Drew Ali because it was he who reached down into the watery grave of hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms and set you and me back up right on our feet again. I'd like to give honor to the forerunner to the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, Marcus Mosiah Garvey. I'd like to give honor to Marcus Mosiah Garvey because this brother had to have pure thoughts in order to pave the way for love. I'd like to give honor to all literature pertaining to Islam in the Moorish Science Temple of America. I'd like to give honor to our two flags, the flag of our origin and the flag of our birth. And honor to our charter that gives us the right to function in these United States and throughout the world without molestation or ridicule of any kind. I'd like to give honor to effort because so many of us don't even try. I'd like to give honor to Temple 2 here in Portland, Oregon, who's doing a mighty fine job. And last but not least, I'd like to give honor to my brother and my friend, Brother Navi Lynch-Bey. I've been with this brother all week, and this brother is really growing. When Navi was in the Sunni community, you used to hear it said all the time, you think you say you could love Allah and not be tested? Let me reiterate that. You think that you say that you love Allah and not be tested? We talked about that this morning. Allah tested him. Not only do he have a new name, when Allah took his leg off, I now call him Kuta Kinte, but he lost his daughter. And when he did that, Navi thought about taking his own life. He said, man, I'm ready to go. They took him down to dialysis, man. He even taken his medicine and asked for extra medicine. And then he thought about it. He said, man, I got work to do. I got to work out my own life sums. I got great grandbabies that I got to live for so they could hear about this truth. And he's all right now. I left him, he was laughing and joking and smiling, and I thank Allah for this brother because he's a rare jewel. I haven't seen too many here in Portland, Oregon that's of that mindset of that brother. So I'd like to give honor to my brother, Navi Lynch-Bey, and man, just know that after the storm come the rainbow. And see, you know, the storms may roll against your shoulder, but through the circle 7, the prophet's literature, they won't be able to touch you. So praise Allah and honor to the prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the source from which we draw our strength. It is a custom most of the time here on this Moorish Voice to read from the Moorish Holy Quran. And I want to read from chapter 38. And the title of chapter 38 is Holy Instructions from the Prophet, the Soul of Man. And I want to read a verse in this chapter dealing with the soul of man. Because when you begin to deal with the soul of man, as I teach so often, you know, you have a heaven on the spiritual plane. That's first heaven. Then you have a heaven on the second plane, which is the plane of soul. And then you have a heaven on this third plane, which is the third plane, which is the plane of things made manifest. So down here on this third plane, we're going to make heaven on earth. But in order to make heaven on earth on this plane of things made manifest, we're going to have some understanding, because Drew Ali say understanding is the rock on which man builds himself. So now let me read the chapter of this week. The title of this chapter again is Holy Instructions from the Prophet, the Soul of Man. And I'm going to read from verse 24. And verse 24 reads on this wise. God heard, for she is rash. Restrain her, for she is irregular. Correct her, for she is outrageous. More supple is she than water, more flexible than wax, more yielding than air is there aught that can bind her. So now let's get some understanding. We said that the title of this chapter was the soul of man. And if this chapter is the soul of man, when he said God heard, for she is rash. Restrain her, for she is irregular. He's not talking about a woman. He's talking about your soul. Because whenever you read the Moorish Holy Quran, the sheiks taught me back in the day that the first thing you do is read the top to get the capture. And the capture telling us about the soul of man. So we all have a spirit, we have a soul, and we are here in the flesh. So now let's look at this soul, Navi. Let's look at this soul, my brother, Sheik. That's what I'm going to call you because you're of that spirit. Now, when we begin to talk about God, her, for she is wrath, what are we talking about? We're talking about your soul. Now, how do we guard the soul? Now, when you begin to talk about the soul, now Jew Ali say the soul remained perfect, even in the bosom of a fool. So now when we begin to talk about the soul, we're talking about a battling ground where it's perfect at. And now there's a war going on. And the war going on the plane of soul is known as the war of Armageddon. And this war of Armageddon deals with truth and it deals with falsehood. And you have to fight this battle on the plane of soul. Now, when you fight this battle on the plane of soul, you know how you go inside your mind and you go through trials and tribulations and you trying to overcome things and you are dialoguing with yourself in your mind. You are talking to yourself on the plane of soul. Now, two things going to happen. When you're wrestling on the plane of soul, when you come to that understanding, because understanding is the rock on which man builds himself, now we're on the plane of soul. Now, you know when you drive your car down the street, you got a red light, you got a yellow light, and you got a green light. Now, the yellow light is the caution light. The yellow light is the plane of soul. So now we're trying to overcome something. What are we trying to overcome? We're trying to stop drinking, and we're trying to stop smoking. And we're going to do it on the plane of soul to overcome. So two things going to happen. You can go all the way to the spiritual plane, or you can go all the way to the physical plane. What that means, you're going to overcome the foe, or you're going to go back and start dealing with it again in the flesh. So dealing with the plane of soul, the reason why Jew Ali say the soul remained perfect on this battling ground, because you got a choice. Because he gave you a will. The will of man make possible the action of the holy breath. And when Allah and man are one, then the resurrection is a fact. We're talking about resurrecting, dealing with the plane of soul. And when you resurrect, that means you're rising above the dead. How do we rise above the dead? Well, most of you are in the church. And if you begin to live according to the fruit of the Spirit, then you done rose above the things of the world. If you in an Islamic community and you living according to the Kalima Shahada, if you doing all the things in that tenet, then you have rose above the flesh. If you're in the Moorish Science Temple of America and you live according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, on which are the highest principles known to man, then you could connect yourself back to God Allah. Because it says through carnal thoughts and words and deeds, man tore himself away from Allah, he debased himself. So you debase yourself from God when you try to live according to the things of the world, the murky ethers of the flesh. So I wanted to read this today because my brother Navi was going through some things and he was wrestling with some things, and I'm letting him know, you ain't got to go back to the flesh with it. Take it on to the spirit, because we don't know how old we are in the flesh. By many ages, man will tarry until all his lessons are learned. So we are on this plane of things made manifest to learn some lessons. And when you learn the lesson, you'll get closer to the great God, Allah. Now, before I get into my subject matter this evening, because my subject matter is dealing with the oak tree and the palm tree. You know, when the thunder and the lightnings come, and when the lightning and the thunder, you see the palm tree just humbled itself and bowed down and come right back up. But the oak tree, this chump think he bad, so he gonna stand up and he can't bend and he gonna crack and he ain't gonna be no more. So we ain't gonna crack today. We're going to overcome these lessons, and we're going to talk about something because it's imperative that I do. Now, Jew Ali bought us 2 flags. He bought us 2 flags. And I want to go back into this. He had to bring us 2 flags. He had to bring us 2 flags just like he had to bring 2 things. He had to bring us something that the rest of the prophets didn't bring. Every prophet of the great God Allah came to a people. Muhammad came to the Arabians. He was a universal prophet, so he came to the Arabians first, and then the world. Jesus. Why did Allah send Jesus to this earth? To save the Israelites from the iron hand oppression of the pale-skinned nations of Europe, who was governing the portion of Palestine at that time. So Jesus came to the Israelites. And no, Drew Ali coming now. Who was Drew Ali coming to? Drew Ali had to do something different, I told you. So he didn't come to a particular people. He came to the Negro. He came to the colored. He came to the black. He came to the coon. He came to the, and whoever else that gave you something that you accepted it. Because we are the only people on this plane of things made manifest. So as Navi always teach, he say, we was 3/5 of a man. He said, we 3/5 of a man, and the European tell you that because 2/5 was missing. And the 2/5, we say, well, when it comes to a European, that means it's 3 of them to 2 of us. And that makes it 5. But that sounds good. But the 3/5 is that 2 is missing. I agree that we, as so-called Negro, colored, and black, we're 3/5 of a man. One of the reasons why we 3/5 of a man, because we're not honoring thy father and thy mother. And when you honor your father and your mother, then your days will be longer upon this earth land, which the Lord thy God Allah has given thee. But if you call yourself Negro, colored, and black, Afro-American, you have no place on earth. Because man, today, is what his forefathers were yesterday. And there's no one who is able to change man from the decent nature of his mother and father unless his power extends beyond the great universal creator, Allah himself. So I want to talk about that because Noble Drew Ali came and brought you your nationality, hooking you back up with the families of nations and your divine creed, which is your religion. These was 2/5 that was missing in your life because you had no religion. They took your religion and gave you one. They gave you a religion that wasn't of your mother and father. They even told you that in the beginning was the word. And being that we come from the ancient Moabites, we know that in the beginning was the thought, because thought is the cause of everything. Even this room that I'm in, man had to think about it and then make it into manifestation. This suit I have on, man had to think about it and then make it into manifestation. But he didn't make the birds. He didn't make the bees. Nor did he make the flowers and the trees. That came from the great universal creator, Allah himself. So now you know that you are no longer 3/5 of a man. And let me tell you some good stuff about that. I was listening to this president of ours, our great president. And he over in Jerusalem now. And over there in Jerusalem, he's telling you what the capital is. He's telling you what is the capital is, and that's just like somebody from another country tell you that the capital is in Washington, D.C., or no, it ain't in D.C., it's still in Philadelphia. Because you know that the White House was moved from 6th and Chestnut Street and Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, on which we go every year to Washington, D.C. So now, let's talk about that. So now, when Trump over there doing something, it's all about that flag. See, there's a flag over there, in Israel over there, and they have a flag, and it's a 6-pointed star. And it's a hectagram, and it's the Star of David, so they say. So are we having trouble? Because that's the Star of David, but there was a Star of Solomon. And Solomon is the son of David, the grandchildren of Ruth, my sister. So now I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the family of nations. So now the Star of Solomon was taken down in Morocco. See, because Morocco is the capital. You can't get around that. 7 miles from the Gibraltar Strait. You can't get around that. But see, we say we're Moorish American because what Morocco are you talking about? You talking about French Morocco or you talking about Spanish Morocco? Because when Noble Drew Ali came on the scene, what flag was flying in Morocco? Not the red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center. They had took that down because they want to strip you and me from being a part of this great human family, this great melting pot. So they took that down and they messed up their plan. So the plan that they had, they're trying to work it now. It's hard to work it because Drew Ali done went and had Woodrow Wilson give him that flag out the vault. And so now you got the flag of David up that they gave you, and you got the flag of Solomon that Drew Ali gave you and me back. And if Drew Ali wouldn't have bought us a flag, then he wouldn't have been the prophet of Allah in this era of time. Because the book say whenever a nation is in need for a prophet, Allah will send one that will bring a methodology that will be conducive to our growth and our development, hooking us back up with the founder of the nation. So now I'm not Negro, because Negro is a name given to a river in West Africa by Moors because it contained black water. That river today is in Brazil. We say that river is in Brazil today. Yes, it's in Brazil, because Brazil is a part of West Africa. How so? Through the Berlin Conference. When you look at Saudi Arabia today, they are not the Arabs. They are not the Saudi Arabia. Look at J.A. Rogers' books. That's why when I come in back in the 60s and the 70s, you had to study J.A. Rogers, because you see the original Moors there who was in Morocco. Rome done took that. They done took everything. The only thing that they haven't took is your hue. So you need to understand. See, he said through sin and disobedience, every nation has suffered slavery due to the fact that you honor not the creed and principles of your mothers and fathers and strayed after the gods of Europe, of whom we knew nothing. And that's what we're doing. Now, let me share something else with you. Something else is going on. What's going on now is on all of the networks. All of the men is getting fired from their jobs, getting ready to go to court. They getting ready to go to court because the women is filing charges on them because they was what is known as sexual harassment. And I feel sorry for the brothers. And I also feel sorry for the sister. But I'm going to use myself as an example because I'm over 65. I'm not going to use nobody else. I'm going to use myself. I understand. I understand when Virginia Slim and when the woman couldn't even vote. I understand that what's taking place up there and the women, what their mentality is, who have those that was mentally used to come forth and do this to the man and do that to the man because the woman is trying to take over again. That's why it was hard for her to vote, because you got to lift that spirit. I've told you many times that when you look at the male socket and when you look at the female socket, it is the female socket that has the electricity in it because she's a piece of work. Now, there was a sister that I met back in the 70s, and her name was Sister Franklin Eel. She looked old like my mother. She wore orthopedic shoes. She was a member of the Moorish Home No. 2 in Virginia. And she had left there and moved to New York. And when she moved to New York, she became a member of Temple 21 up there. Sister Franklin Hill, the old time, she done passed away now. So she was down there in Petersburg in Moorish Home No. 1. So we had a conversation. And she said, Lynch-Bey, you should marry me. And I'm looking at her because she got orthopedic shoes like my mother. And I got an aunt that was born right here on August the 6th, 1876, 22 years older than my father. And she used to tell us about slavery and gave me some character. So I'm listening to Sister Franklin Hill that lived on the colony, her and Sister Davis-Bey, because she was the governor of the colony that back in the 70s, the same time with Muhammad Nelson Bey. And a lot of people will listen to this thing. So why is Lynch-Bey talking about Nelson Bey, or why is he talking about Cook Bey, or why do he talk about Drew Ali, seamstress Sister Tiggs Hill, or Brother Barker Bey? Why? Because when I come up, after German Bey left that grand body, we couldn't find nobody else nowhere else. And if it wasn't German Bey or the grand body of C. Kirkham Bey, back then, we couldn't get no help. We couldn't get no help. I mean, I wasn't going over there. Somebody told me they got 2 or 3 prophets, and I'm back. I wouldn't go there because understanding is a rock on which man builds himself, and I'm a little intelligent for that now that I've grown. But I speak of thee because these are they who helped me. But she told me that. She said, you should marry me. And what I would do, she said, I can instruct your wives like the prophet instructed us to instruct them. So I thought about that for a long time. And then I remember Noah Drew Ali in one of the booklets, he said, I got one, or I got two, and one day you'll have many as you could take care of. So what is taking place right now? And she also said the reason why so many of our sisters is no longer in the men and is into the women, because first of all, you got to understand that there's more women in the world than there is men. Most of the men going to jail, getting killed, etc., so it's more women. So in the Islamic world, say that we had a war, and we went to war, I got killed. And I have Brother Navi as my brother. So I'm married and I have a wife. What would he do? He would take my wife in and make sure she's secure and make sure my children are secure so she wouldn't have to live out there on the desert. So in our culture, see, what you have to understand too, we here in America, I met a Chinese girl the other day, and I was telling her about this Moorish Voice television show. And I was telling this Chinese girl that she can come on the Moorish Voice. And I say, because I know your mothers and fathers taught about Buddha, or they taught you about Confucius. She said, yeah, that's in my genealogy. She said, but I don't study Buddha. I don't study Confucius. I'm a Christian. And I smile and I laugh because the Christians are taking over the world. Everybody else who have customs, culture, heritages, and traditions, you're giving all of that up. And you're taking on the concepts and ideologies of the European nations. So they're rolling. After they done what they done to you and me through the advent of slavery, they got the whole world. You know what I'm saying? He got the whole world in his hands. He got you and me in his hands. And everybody is taking on those concepts. And the only way that we're going to be saved as a people, we need to worship on our own vine and trick feet. We got to understand what our forefathers brought to us and why they did. Now, the book said be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. That's what it says. But those that tell you that is the nuns and the priests. I was talking to one of the Lynch-Bey twins the other day, and he was telling me that Brother Page Hill on Morris Home #2 is in the hospital. He's not doing too well. That was my man. We go way back. And him and his brother, Dr. Page Hill, was in the Morris Science Temple. They used to work at a convent. And when they used to work at the convent, they were little boys. They used to get up there and crawl and go down there and look in the big mural and see the priests and the nuns in there doing something that was diametrically opposed to what they supposed to have been doing. And later on, they tore down the convent. And when they tore down the convent, what did they find in the walls? A lot of dead babies. So what we need to do is understand Remus and Ramus, those she-wolves that lived in the cave. And that's how women look at me today. That's how they look at all the brothers. They want to look at you like Remus and Ramus, the she who was sucking by the wolf. And you know why you do that? Because when you were living in the cave, you were licking and you were sucking and doing all those things that were diametrically opposed to our culture. So now you want me to lick and you want me to suck. You want me to take on something that don't even belong to. I'm not from France. I don't know nothing about the French tickler. I am of African descent. And we have swooped down to take on all them concepts. Every time I meet a sister, I was telling brother just before the show, he asked me about a girl. And you know what I told him? I said, nah, she don't come around no more. I said, but she came and told me something about Navi and told me, what's wrong, Lynch-Bey? You don't want me? I'm not good enough for you? Why you ain't asked for me? That's why you came anyway, sister. You came over here because you's a groupie. You's a groupie and you come over here because you see brother with suits on and you try to pull one and you want to tell him something about some French tickler. So we have a lot of work to do. We are those of African descent. I knew another brother named Earl Coleman. Earl Coleman was a brother out of Washington, from North Carolina, but he moved to Washington, D.C. And he was telling me one day, he said, man, my mother, Earl is much older than me. He said, my mother had a boyfriend. And her boyfriend asked her to eat. And she said, how you going to eat something to get up and walk? And he said when he asked her mother that, said all of the dishes, all of the glasses, and all of those things that his mother had in the cabinet, she threw all that stuff away. So we have to realize that we take on some concepts. We take on some thought patterns that has nothing to do with us. I was riding up here with Gamaliel. I said, just think. If you walked in the door and seen Mary and Joseph in there, and Mary down there on her knees looking at Joseph, up at Joseph like he's crazy. Something wrong with that picture, because from our genealogy, that's not a part of our forefathers. So you got to understand Ruth, or you got to understand Mary, or you got to understand Elizabeth. John the Baptist and Jesus was cousins. Elizabeth and Mary was cousins from the Essene brotherhood. This is from which we come. So now, we're looking at this as being something crazy, but I'm going to give you some signs. Now, I say that I'm a Moorish American, but you got people talking about that flag. They done stole our birthright. They done stole our forefathers. They done stole everything from you and me other than our hue. So now we done took over this concept. Even got me in the church. I was singing Down at the Cross, where I first saw the light. I was in the church. My family had me there, but I thank my family for that. I was all my life, the women. See, I know good women because I was raised by good women. I was talking to my cousin Butch yesterday, and never before in my household have I heard any cussing. Have I heard any in my cousins, my aunts? None of them. All of them was in the Spirit of God, and you never heard that kind of stuff in your household. So we got to carry this on. But now that they done changed the strip and sent all our brothers and sisters into the penitentiary, they done took a generation from us. They done took a generation from us, and now they're lost. You know, they brought that crack into our neighborhoods, and now that's another part of genocide. Genocide is also a part of when you see brothers in the penitentiary. Now, you know, they had something in Africa. They was talking about the children, and they was talking about in the children how everybody, a village, it was talking about a village, and a village raised a child. So everybody in the village raised a child. Why? Because we had something called polygamy. And that was because there were so many women, brothers had more than one wife if they could take care of her. But now, if you tell a woman about polygamy, she's going to go crazy. Because if you want to see your cell phone, she want to know who you're talking to, she want to know where you at and where you've been. You need to get into your literature. You talking about the brothers rape you and they did all that, but when you come for the job interview, look what you got on. Got your breasts showing out, got your dress all up here, and then when he tell you that he's not going to leave you alone for his wife, and he going back to his wife, then you get mad. And now he mad, you going to talk about, well, he did this to me, and he did that to me. Just like when you had Patino and them dudes in college, and they talking about he did something to them little college students. Them dudes 17, 18, 19 years old. Big playing football, and he went up in you, and you talking about you didn't know, and you 19, 20 years old. We knew that at 8, 9 years old that you don't do that. So something is wrong with this picture. I remember a time that when certain nations would go out to war, they would take little boys with them. And the reason why they take the boys with them, so they can get their thing off. So what we need to do as a people, we need to stop worshiping under somebody else's vine and fig tree. We need to look at ourselves. We need to look at our nation. We need to look at what we need to do to grow. We always in somebody else, just like those who call themselves Irish. I say Irish because Lynch is an Irish name. Those that say they have a day called St. Patrick's Day. And on St. Patrick's Day, during this St. Patrick's Day, they wear green, and they have a leprechaun. And just like this coming up now is a Chinese New Year. Everybody have a holiday except you and me. And all of you who call yourself Christians, you know Jeremiah chapter 10 tell you don't put up no Christmas tree, but you do it anyway. And you do it on the strength of my brother because you want to claim Jesus. You want to claim Jesus as being of your bloodline. That's why Drew Ali said, we, as a clean and pure nation, descendants of the inhabitants of Africa do not desire, see, and the reason why he told us that is because of the bloodline. You know, if you have a Great Dane, you can get a lot of money for him. If you have a pit bull, you can get a lot of money for him. But if you begin to mix the Great Dane and the German Shepherd and have puppies, then the animal will become a sooner. And I know about love because love is the only savior of the world. And Jesus, son of Mary, came to manifest that love to man. But you got to look at it from another perspective because we're all part of the human family. But you have to understand that you have a lion and you have a tiger. And both of them is of the animal kingdom, of the cat family. But they do not mix the seed. And the reason why they mix the seed, because intelligence. All you got to do is look and understand and see. But we, as a people, living here in the United States is known as the Great Melting Pot. And this Great Melting Pot deals with many different nationalities. And every nationality has their own laws, has their own customs, has their own culture. But what they did to us, not knowing that there's a great God, Allah, you took everything through the advent of slavery. Not only did you cut the nose off, you took our land, all our nationality cards in the Moorish Science Temple. No, but you Ali put birthright. Because who in the history of mankind lost the birthright other than you and me? So now, the only way that we're going to grow as a people is to start doing what our forefathers said. Now, Drew Ali tell us, did not we have a national name? When first brought to these shores in the early part of the 17th century? If so, what was it? I don't care what kind of knowledge you have. You could be a lawyer, you could be a doctor, you could be security, whatever you want to be, but proclaim your nationality. You got to proclaim your nationality because in order for us to deal with this agenda that we must have, we cannot go to the European as a Negro, colored, or black. Black, according to science, means death. The only black flag I know is the one that kills roaches, the spray, the bugs. And if you call yourself black, you are a roach. You know why? Because you're a slave to sin. Because it is a sin for any group of people to violate the national constitutional laws of a free national government and cling to the name and principles that delude to slavery. So now, when we begin to talk about Hagar, or when we begin to talk about Sarah, or when we begin to talk about Abraham, how Abraham's wife wasn't able to have children, Sarah, and then he had a handmaid named Hagar the Egyptian, and they had a child, and the child's name was Ishmael, and Ishmael is the father of the Arabian nation. There's something wrong with that picture there. If Ishmael is the father of the Arabian nation, why do the Arabs look like they do, and why do I look like I do if we from the brother? Because if you say that Ishmael had a mother and his mother's name is Hagar, Hagar is the Egyptian. The Egyptian is an African. So something wrong with this picture. I'm trying to tell you something. You got to study to make yourself approved. You got to be what you know. Drew Ali said, don't take my word for it. Check it out. I ain't checking Drew Ali out. You got brothers, don't check nobody out. Drew Ali said, I said, man, who is this dude, Drew Ali? Some Bama coming out of North Carolina. Let me check him out, because I'm not just going to take his word for it. But when this brother said nationality, nobody else talk about nationality other than Drew Ali. Everybody on earth has a nationality except you and me. Yeah, your dog got a nationality. You know, we talks about that too. You got German Shepherds. You got Irish Sellers. And you got Mexican Chihuahua. They got paperwork. Now, Brother Lynch-Bey showed some pictures the other day on Facebook page. He had Sister Tig Eel on there. Sister Tig Eel was the seamstress that made our holy prophet Noble Drew Ali's clothes. Then he had the Mufti on there, Brother Barker Bey. Barker Bey, and I remember all the sisters and Page Eel too used to tell us how Barker Bey used to teach how he used to be in the park when the prophet and Marcus Garvey met. But guess what? I messed up about it now. I come to find out that Sister Tig Eel, the prophet's wife, and Barker Bey, all of them wrong. They joined the Moorish Science Temple of America too quick. See, because after all the time they've been on earth, they didn't get no paperwork. See, they should have joined the temple later on and waited on Lynch-Bey so he can come and give them the paperwork. Because even though Drew Ali was married to Pearl, even though Sister Tiggs Hill used to do Drew Ali's clothes, and even though Barker Bey was the grand mufti that used to guard the prophet, see, they still ain't have it right because Lynch-Bey said, you need your paperwork. He said, you got to get some paperwork and take it. I've said that because Navi got his paperwork. He said, man, if I known I can get this stuff free, Drew Ali said nationality not free but here, but all over the world. He said, man, I wouldn't have did that. You know, but you got to go through it. And you got to go through the day. And that's all I see around here in Portland. And everybody I know, they got their paperwork. Tell them to give you Act 3 of the Divine Constitution and Bylaws. Tell them to give you Act 7. Everyone don't even know the Morse American Prayer. And it's sickening. I'll be glad when them young muftis hurry up so I can lead the way. Because we got to clear this foolishness up. Allah kept us around for good reasons. So it's always an honor to be able to come before our Portland listening audience. Let me get back into this. The sisters, you need to understand this. That in the book of Ecclesiastics, it says everything has its own season. And it says sometime, not all the time, sometime woman teach best. And in this era of time right now, sister, you got to teach this gospel. You got to teach this lesson. Because if I go to Joe and tell Joe to pull up his pants, because he got his pants thing, he going to shoot me in my head. But if you do it, he ain't going to do that to you because you're a woman. So sometimes, you know, I can teach a lesson, and sometimes you can teach a lesson because one without the others but half. We got to do this together. You can't do it by yourself, and I can't do it by myself. But Noble Drew Ali came. And when Noble Drew Ali came, he knew that we're going to go through the changes that we go through today. We got brothers that call themselves Ali. We got brothers that call themselves Muhammad. And Noble Drew Ali told us. He said that if there's a second language that we should learn, it should be Spanish. And I was up in the hospital today and with Gamaliel and Navi, and I would say, Notre Dame, Pa, Notre Dame, more. Todo do. I'm singing a song in Spanish because I'm trying to learn Spanish. But I understand, but you got to understand what the Arabs did. And even right now, whenever the United States is having wars, where are they able to put their ships at? Right over there. Right there in Arabia. But you got to understand, look at it, Arabians today. When Trump went over to Arabia, if Trump would have put one of them crowns on his head, you couldn't have told the difference between him and the Arab. Because the Arab is his brother. They are not the original Arabians. Go get the book of J.A. Rogers if they haven't changed that yet. And when you look at the original, just like Nelson Mandela and de Klerk in South Africa. De Klerk came from somewhere else. He's not a South African. We're Americans because he was born here. So it's a lot of studying that we have to do. We have to study and make ourselves approved. And we have to look at this stuff on the plane of soul. See, I've told you soul is the battling ground, but it's kind of hard because when you living here in America, when America is in control of everything, you know, I was trying to get a brother to work with me that was close to Bruce Bashar on the show, and he didn't want to work with me because because I'm a Muslim and my concept. That's good though. But I want to tell you something. I wear my army hat a lot. And I do that because they used to put the pistols out the window on me when I first got here, especially in the Lord's Center. And when I put my Vietnam hat on, they say, thanks for serving. And I remember when I was in the war. I talk that war talk, and I go around with my veteran hat on and everything. But, man, they tried to kill us in Vietnam. When you try to save one of your own, they'll try to kill you. But it was all right when you try to save one of them because back then, man, the Ku Klux Klan, the Nazis and everybody was running freely in there, told the people at nighttime we have tails. So we going through a lot of things. And the bad part about it, if I begin to talk about the advent of slavery, if I begin to talk about what we need to do as a people, then it's derogatory. That's why it's all right for the preachers that preach. Because they're telling you to learn to love instead of hate, hate your enemy, and let God pray. No, we got some other issues down here that we got to deal with. Because we talking about nationality And we're talking about divine creed. So you ain't gonna keep taking me up in the spirit. Right now we need to come back down here, because the first thing we need to understand is it's hard for me to sit in a meeting with a priest that got a collar around his neck. And the reason why I say that, because he done went to a particular school. And you know about the Berlin Conference. You will know about all these things that you've done to separate us as a people. And I got to constantly teach about it, because they're working so much. The preachers ain't doing it. You're able to get millions of dollars. You ain't got to talk about what took place through the advent of slavery, because we all say, man, I'm tired of hearing you talking about slavery. We done been out of slavery 1,000 years. You're still in the slavery. But the slavery that you're in is mental slavery. Drew Ali said, mental slavery, which you now have, need each and every one of you who think that your conditions can be better. You don't think your conditions can be better. I'll tell you about my little brother, Darrell Holder Ill. He had a question that he wanted to ask. He went to the European instead of coming to the Moors, because he feared that the European got all the signs. So here in the Moorish Science Temple, we have the Book of the Seven Seals. In this Book of the Seven Seals, Drew Ali told us that we was Muslims. Brother asked about that Muslim novel. He was telling me that in the NA book, you read through the prefix of it, it's going to talk about Muslim. The reason why we talk about Muslim and Muslim, because we're over here in the West. And you have an Eastern terminology, and you have a Western terminology. The Greeks talking about there's no J in the Greek language. What that got to do with us anyway, in reference to Jesus? We don't want to deal with the Greeks, because that's the Greek-born gift. Brother told me the other day, my wife is a Greek. Yeah, your wife is a European. And they tell me the same thing. So praise Allah. I want to say praise Allah, because Allah is what gives us what we need to survive. See, hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything in harm is an attribute. There was a book called Pilgrim's Progress. She gave it to me back in the 70s. And this book was written by John Bunyan. And John Bunyan, in the book, he had all different kind of characteristics. And Mr. Know-it-all, Mr. Bigot, Mr. Worldly Wise. And every time I meet a brother, or every time I meet a sister, I tell myself, I wonder who this is. I wonder who this character is. Is this Mr. Bigot? Is this Mr. Worldly Wise? Is this the no? Because when you begin to talk about yourself, man is not the body nor the soul. He's a spirit and a part of Allah. But what spirit are you? See, we want to look at that. It is not in flesh to think. It is not in bones to reason. So let that spirit actuate and direct the flesh. But what spirit is actuating and directing the flesh? Is it a carnal spirit? It is a human spirit? Is it a divine spirit? Is it a lustful spirit? What spirit is actuating and directing the flesh? Because your flesh don't think. Your mind is what directs this flesh. Brother say long time, say, man, you hit me 100 years ago. What did you do 100 years ago to get hit? Evidently, you're doing the same thing, because you're about ready to get hit again. So this is what Noble Drew Ali brought us. He brought us something to save us from the wrath of Allah. And how did he do that? By teaching us to be ourselves. Noble Drew Ali is the only person in America that hooked us back up with the family of nations. You need to understand that before the advent of slavery, there was no color scheme. See, it was one race, which was a human race, and it was subdivided into many different sciences. So we are not racist in the Moorish Science Temple of America, but we have race pride. Drew Ali said, if you have race pride and love your race, join the Moorish Science Temple of America and become a part of this divine movement. Then you will have power to redeem your race, because you'll know who you are and who your forefathers were. Because where there's unity, there is strength. Together we stand, and divided we fall. Come, good people, because the Prophet Noble Drew Ali sent to redeem this nation from mental slavery, which you now have, need each and every one of you who think that your conditions can be better. This is a field open to strong men and women to uplift the nation and take your place in the affairs of men. The European nations and other nations are helping him. Why not you? It is your problem. The Negro problem is being solved only as it can, and that is through the Moorish national divine movement. If you have a nation, you must have a free national name in order to be recognized by this nation as an American citizen. This is what was meant when it was said, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Now, sister, we got to sit down about this science, see, because our sisters is taking on some concepts and some ideology, the same thing with our brothers that's not apart. Now, all these brothers that mess, they say, with other women. I remember Pleasant Bay. Let me give this brother honor, because he done changed the flag. He done bumped his head right now, but he one of the sharpest brothers in the nation once he get that foolishness out the way. Pleasant Bay told me one day, because he has 7 wives. He said, Lynch-Bey, he said, people complaining that I got 7 wives. He said, but everybody that's complaining about my 7 wives, they sneaking off. They doing this thing on their wife. They doing that on their wife. They got women on the side. And I see that right here in Portland. Brother, 70 years old. Gave a brother the other day some money. Said, man, take this over to my girlfriend, you know, because I can't leave the house because I'm over here with this other girl. I look at him like a sucker. You got a woman, and you can't go to her. You got to send somebody else to her because you got another woman. And then when y'all fall out, you go home, and at nighttime, she tell you, you got to sleep on the couch, chump. You can't come back here in this bedroom. And you just paid all the bills. And you so weak, you know why you did that, though? Because you begin to eat something that get up and walk. And when you eat things that get up and walk, you lose the respect that you are due. And Drew Ali gave us all of that. Like I say, look at Abraham. Look at Boaz by Ruth, Jesse, King David, Solomon, Hezekiah, and Joseph by Mary. Certain things you ain't got to think about these brothers and sisters doing. My mother, every time I meet a girl, I said, now, you know, my mother told me don't never do this. Your mother is antiquated. She's old. She don't know what, you know why? Because you done took on that concept. Now she old because she tell me to wish under my own and vine and fig tree, and you done been with all them Romans, all them Europeans, and you done did all this crazy stuff, and now a brother like me, you gonna try to destroy me too. You want me to lose my head and give it to you. It's pathetic. It's sickening. And now I like to reiterate, all you brothers, we need to sit down and talk. But everybody over here with the UCC, and you over here with the doo-doo-die, and the blah, 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 you done recall, and we ain't even talking about the prophet's teachings. We got to teach these lessons to our little ones to save them. See, we have to save our babies from the wrath of Allah. And how you do that? By teaching them to be themselves, not to be somebody else. Not to be of this nationality, because all nationalities have a different spirit. All of it is not the same. It depends on the growth and the a Chinese, a Vietnamese, a German, and a Moorish. Our whole concepts are different. There's certain laws and customs that we have are not the same. Even when you go to China or you go to Africa, the constitutions are different. None of it is the same. So worship under your own vine and fig tree. You know, this is why we're going through the changes that we're going through now. My mother, oldest sister, was born in August the 6th, 1876. 20-something years, 20-something years older than my mother. And she taught me some things. And the things that she taught me was the things that her mother and father taught her. So now this is a new era of time. I remember my sister. She's still living, the youngest one. And she used to send me to the store because she was 3 years older than me. She used to send me to the store to get some napkins for her because at her young age then, she began to use them kind of napkins that the girl used. You know where the napkins was? On the bottom shelf. The napkins on the bottom shelf because of the principle. Certain things that you see transpiring today, you know, just like the Jewel Box Review. I seen that on CNN today, talking about that in the European country, how different kind of countries is allowing certain things to transpire. That brother down there in Texas, that European in Texas, in Alabama, he has some concepts about certain things that involved his principles. And I'm going to use myself, for example. If I had a family member from the same mother or from the same aunt. And they was living according to another nationality. If they took on these different things, you know, if they want to be Adam and Steve and not Adam and Eve, then I can't support that idea. See? And when we support that, then we become of that thought pattern. We got to teach this God, that's my brother. Now, you might not be my brother, or you might not be my sister. Because if God is the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. So if you are not living according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, then God ain't your Father. See, because the only time you call God anyway is when you are in trouble. When you're not in trouble, you don't pray. But what do you ask him for? I was taught as a child, you ask God for two things. You ask him for wisdom, and you ask him for strength. I was taught that as a child. But now, I don't have that same concept because I'm thinking like somebody else. I want a Rolls Royce, God. I want a basketball. And I want all these other things. You know, I'm ready to ask God for all these kind of things now. I want the things of the world now. Because I'm out here on this plane of things made manifest. I'm going to stop talking. I want to sing a song to Nabee's daughter that passed. I want to sing one verse and then I'm going to close out. And I want you to know, thank you, our Portland listening audience, because it's always an honor to be able to come before you to talk about the Prophet Noble Drew Ali. I love talking about the Prophet Noble Drew Ali, and I love running my mouth. And all this stuff I just said to you, I done said it before because I knew it before. So in conclusion, I would like to sing a song. And this is a song that we sing in the Moorish Science Temple of America. And when I looked at the first convention, I seen this same sign on the rock.
The young brother was downright eloquent with his misinformed soliloquy. He said using nigger affectionately among ourselves.
Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation, by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen.
But us. And you thought that kind of reasoning existed only in the Twilight Zone. Then again, the Twilight Zone was a TV show, and the plight of Black America is tragic reality. Somebody said the revolution would not be televised. They didn't say anything about our devolution, which is well documented. You see it every day, our disrespect for one another. You can hear it in our sad excuse for artistry.